Imagine you're just going about your day, minding your own business, when suddenly you're approached by someone in uniform, demanding answers you're not legally obligated to give. In this episode, we encounter a situation where a female officer pushes the boundaries, insisting on ID without any cause. What happens when someone calmly knows their rights and stands their ground? This interaction unfolds in a way that highlights not just the importance of understanding the law, but also how power can sometimes be misused to intimidate. You'll see the tension rise as the officer tries to escalate, and the person on the receiving end holds firm with calm confidence. Will reason and respect prevail, or does the encounter spiral into a frustrating display of unchecked authority? Stick around to see how this one unfolds, and let's dive into the real-life moments where knowing your rights isn't just important, it's necessary. The encounter begins with a simple question from the officer, but it's clear there's more to it than meets the eye. She seems determined, her tone firm yet subtly challenging, as if expecting compliance without hesitation. The person she's addressing, however, remains composed, responding with calm but unwavering confidence. You can almost feel the tension building with every word exchanged. What sparked this interaction? There's no obvious sign of a crime or any reason for suspicion, yet the officer continues to press for identification. It's a classic moment that raises questions. Is this about upholding the law, or is it about exerting authority? The person's refusal to hand over their ID is not an act of defiance but one of principle, an exercise of rights that are often misunderstood or ignored. As the officer doubles down, you can sense her frustration growing. Will she back off or escalate further? The situation feels like it's teetering on the edge, leaving everyone wondering what will happen next. The officer's demeanor shifts subtly, her authority becoming more pronounced as she steps closer. Her questions now carry a sharper edge, and it's clear she expects compliance. But the person standing before her isn't rattled. They calmly explain their rights, citing the lack of any crime or reasonable suspicion that would require them to show ID. Their words are measured, respectful, but firm, a quiet refusal to yield under pressure. Meanwhile, passers-by begin to take notice. Some glance curiously, others pause for a moment, sensing the charged atmosphere. The officer, aware of the small but growing audience, appears caught between maintaining her composure and asserting control. It's a delicate balance, and every second of hesitation feels like an eternity. As the back and forth continues, the conversation takes a deeper turn. Is this really about a lawful request, or is something else driving the interaction? The tension is thick, the stakes feel high, and both sides seem unwilling to back down. With emotions quietly simmering, it's anyone's guess where this will lead. The officer takes a deep breath, her expression hardening as she makes it clear she's not walking away from this. Her tone becomes more assertive, each word carrying the weight of authority. She demands cooperation, suggesting that non-compliance could lead to further action. But even as the pressure mounts, the person stands their ground, calmly repeating the same phrase. Am I being detained? Have I committed a crime? The crowd has grown slightly larger now, with a few people pulling out their phones to record what's happening. The officer notices but doesn't seem fazed. If anything, she doubles down, her posture stiff and voice raised slightly louder as if trying to regain control of the situation. The person, however, doesn't flinch. Their calm persistence seems to unnerve her, creating a standoff charged with unspoken tension. Each passing second feels heavier than the last. The question now isn't just about the legality of the situation, but how far each side is willing to push. The climax is just around the corner. Just when it seems the situation has reached its breaking point, another officer arrives on the scene. This one, an older, more seasoned figure, approaches with a calm but scrutinizing gaze. The dynamic shifts immediately. The first officer quickly fills him in, emphasizing her demands for identification and the person's refusal to comply. There's a moment of quiet as he listens, nodding slightly, but his focus shifts to the person at the center of it all. His tone is noticeably different, less confrontational, more deliberate. He asks a question, not about ID, but about the situation itself. What's going on here? It's clear he's assessing both sides, trying to piece together the bigger picture. The first officer looks uneasy, as if the sudden change in approach might undermine her stance. This new twist raises the stakes. Will the second officer back his colleague, or will he question the legitimacy of her demands? The tension climbs higher as the person, still composed, carefully explains their side once again. The second officer listens intently, his expression unreadable as the person calmly lays out their rights, emphasizing the lack of any crime or reasonable suspicion. The crowd, now a mix of quiet observers and a few vocal supporters, watches closely, sensing that a decision is imminent. After a long pause, the senior officer turns to his colleague and asks, "Do we have anything here?" His question hangs in the air, and for a moment, the first officer hesitates, her earlier confidence faltering. She looks around, perhaps realizing the growing scrutiny and the limits of her position. Finally, she steps back slightly, muttering something about just doing her job. Just as the tension seems to dissolve, the senior officer leans in closer to the person and says quietly, "You're free to go, but you handled that well. Not everyone does." It's an unexpected moment of acknowledgement, but the person stays calm, nodding politely before walking away. As the crowd disperses, the first officer remains still, her expression unreadable, leaving everyone wondering what she'll take away from the encounter. As the dust settles, the person walks away with their rights intact, head held high. The crowd slowly disperses, some murmuring about what they just witnessed, others still holding their phones, unsure if they caught the most intense moments. It's clear the encounter left an impression, not just on the bystanders, but also on the officers involved. The senior officer quietly addresses his colleague before they both return to their patrol car. Whatever was said between them remains a mystery, but her demeanor is noticeably more subdued. Perhaps it's a moment of reflection, a chance to reconsider the balance between authority and understanding the rights of others. For those who witnessed it, the scene was a reminder of the importance of knowing the law and staying calm under pressure. It showed how composure and knowledge can diffuse even the most tense encounters. The message is clear: standing up for your rights matters, but doing so respectfully can leave an even stronger impact.